Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Here's Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. Warnings for more tough times ahead for Barbados and the rest of the region as the ongoing war in Ukraine continues to create global uncertainty. This story takes the lead in today's edition of Caribbean Perspective for Friday, 8th April 2022. Details when we return.
Hubbard's Multi-Department Mount Gay and Hubbard's Tire Bay, located at the Building Supplies compound in Grand Anse, are reminding the motoring public that another round for licensing and inspection has begun. Just arrived on new shipments of quality furrowed and torque tires to fit all makes and models of vehicles at competitive pricing. Shop early to avoid the hassle of long lines. WhatsApp them on 473-405-5482. Hubbard's, quality service, affordable prices.
Welcome back. Barbados' Prime Minister and the Caribbean's foremost visionary leader, Mia Mottley, told the Caribbean Nations Security Conference at the Hilton there is no getting away from the rising cost of living that will affect Barbados and other countries. Details in this Barbados Today news item.
The truth is that with the war in Ukraine now going into its fifth or so week, we are now going to start to see, regrettably, some of the consequences of that war which have been spoken about. That is going to lead to discomfort in many of our countries with respect to prices and with respect to access to those commodities. It is going to lead, therefore, to the potential risk of us having to be able to settle our populations and to get them to understand that the world is going through a difficult moment. But it is not the first time that it has gone through, and it will regrettably not be the last because of the nature of just human civilization and our natural-made environment.
The commander of the U.S. Southern Command, Laura Richardson, who also addressed the CANSAC meeting, lamented that the Caribbean will be negatively impacted by the war in Ukraine. She stressed that it was mission critical to ensure the Caribbean remains a zone of peace, but acknowledged the region was facing other threats to its security.
Recent crisis in Europe will undoubtedly impact the Caribbean and other regions in the world, such as increasing energy prices, which we've already seen, and the supply chain disruptions that we've already been experiencing. But I also know that the Caribbean faces unique cross-cutting threats in an ever-changing security environment. Stronger hurricanes and rising sea levels caused by climate change are destroying lives and livelihoods, tearing up family homes and reversing decades of growth. Prime Minister Mottley, you said it best during COP26 at the Climate Change Summit in Glasgow last year, that a 2-degree rise in global temperature is a death sentence for the small island developing states. What's worse is the poverty and job loss caused by natural disasters, which leaves so many people vulnerable to crime and violence.
The increasing risks facing Caribbean countries was also a major talking point at the Caribbean Regional Risk Conference, which opened in Barbados on Wednesday.
President of the Caribbean Development Bank, Dr. Jean Leon, said the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russia-Ukraine war, and new emerging risks such as global rising inflation, a continued increase in interest rates, and food and energy insecurity threaten the region's development, and countries must adopt a new way to better respond to these increasing risks.
Isolating the management of different types of risk is not the most effective way to mitigate risks. In fact, we hope you will conclude that risk management must be holistic and encompass a coherent set of policies that can address the diverse aspects of an evolving risk ecosystem. Caribbean countries are known to be among the most vulnerable states, and the accumulated impact of a variety of natural hazard and macroeconomic shocks have significantly slowed our development and risk not achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030.
Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness has been defending his government's decision to put forward his Foreign Affairs Minister Kamina Johnson-Smith as Jamaica's nominee for the post of Secretary General of the Commonwealth, even though CARICOM has thrown its support behind the incumbent, Baroness Patricia Scotland.
He says there has been a strong push for an alternative to the incumbent.
Kenya nominated a candidate and then subsequently withdrew. And today, Tuvalu formally launched its candidature in London. And it is quite possible that others could emerge. We can conclude that the first term of the incumbent has left room for challenge. In recent weeks, Jamaica has had to consider the state of affairs and future of the Commonwealth in conjunction with the incredibly strong encouragement and support to put forward a candidate, and specifically in the person of Minister Johnson-Smith.
Chartered accountant and partner at Grant Thornton, Richard Peterkin, says the projected revenue for the coming year in St. Lucia, as outlined in the 2022-2023 St. Lucia estimates of revenue and expenditure, is achievable. He also believes that the projected capital investment is attainable. Details in this DBS News World report with Don Nicholas.
According to Chartered Accountant and partner at Grant Thornton, Richard Peterkin, the budget seems to offer something for everyone. In his view, to some extent, it lives up to expectations. On the side of revenue, he added there is not much of a difference as no new taxes are being planned. However, he believes the projected revenue for the coming year is achievable. The big question has to do with the level of borrowing, with $490 million planned, and not forgetting that this government has heavily criticized the previous one for what it perceived to be excessive borrowing.
But if we look at the source of where those loans are coming from, as I said before, if we're getting concessional rates, if our weighted average cost of capital does not go up, if the maturities are flattened out and spread over the next 20 years, then that borrowing is not going to create huge problems in the coming year. And you could see in the estimates for interest and principal repayment, those particular ratios have not gone out of whack. And of course, we've got assistance from the international financial institutions that have deferred a certain amount of debt, that have made some of our repayments easier.
From Mr. Peterkin's vantage point, it's also important to note that the Prime Minister is not the mastermind behind the budget. Technocrats at the various ministries have a major input into the final document. Spending $1.8 billion, he pointed out, would go a long way to restoring economic growth by stemming the tide of unemployment and caring for indigents, and if the capital expenditure can be implemented, then it will work in the country's best interest.
And the good thing about the capital expenditure, a number of people admitted that in the debate that there were a number of good projects that had been started by the prior government for which they should be given credit. And there will be a continuation of most of those larger projects, Kiwanora, St. Jude, roads, and a lot of the money is already in place for them.
Mr. Peterkin is hoping that things will go according to plan. For the DBS News World, I'm Don Nicholas.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Guyana's Chief Elections Officer Vishnu Prasad has officially written to the Speaker of Guyana's House of Assembly informing him that the official opposition has extracted the names of PNCR members Aubrey Norton and former party chairperson Walter Lawrence to be members of Parliament for the APNU-AFC. Gordon Mosley of News Source Guyana reports.
The move comes one day after the representative of the list of candidates for the coalition, Mr. David Granger, submitted the two names to the Chief Election Officer to be extracted following consultations between the APNU and AFC. In the letter to the Speaker, the Chief Election Officer said that he should be informed that the names of Aubrey Norton and Walter Lawrence have been extracted, and accordingly, Aubrey Norton and Walter Lawrence are duly declared members of the National Assembly from the date hereof. The chairman of the Elections Commission has also been requested to issue certificates of election in accordance with the provisions of the Representation of the People Act, Chapter 103, to Mr. Norton and Ms. Lawrence. Last week, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Mansour Nadir, triggered the process by advising Mr. Granger of the 2 vacant positions in the Assembly for the opposition. Those vacant positions were created by the resignation of Nicolette Henry and Joe Harmon as members of Parliament. Although Mr. Harmon's seat became vacant on the 15th of March, the process to replace him only took effect when the resignation of Nicolette Henry took effect at the end of March. The 2 new MPs will be sworn in at the next sitting of the National Assembly, and that sitting is expected soon. Once the 2 become members of Parliament, the opposition members will meet for the election of Aubrey Norton to the position of Opposition Leader. The position of Opposition Leader is a constitutional position, and the President is required by the Constitution to engage the Opposition Leader on a number of issues, including several appointments. The President had refused to engage with Mr. Harmon while he was Opposition Leader, declaring that he will only do so after Harmon publicly recognizes him as President. It is unclear whether the President intends to hold that same position with Norton as the opposition leader.
Cuba is struggling to cover a fuel import deficit as imports from Venezuela and other countries remain below historical levels as global prices boosted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine made purchases almost unaffordable.
The Caribbean country, which is dependent on fuel imports mostly from the political ally Venezuela to cover more than half of its demand, is since last month dealing with diesel and gasoline shortages, leading to long lines in front of stations. Insufficient fuel imports are not the major hurdle for Cuba's economy struggling to recover following the coronavirus pandemic and harsher U.S. sanctions imposed by the administration of former President Donald Trump. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has provided Cuba with more than 32,000 barrels per day of crude since 2019, even amid U.S. sanctions on both countries. But fuel volumes sent to the island have fallen as Venezuela has struggled to produce refined products for its own needs. According to vessel monitoring data, Cuba imported some 70,000 barrels per day of crude and fuel in the first quarter of the year, below the about 100,000 barrels per day in the communist-ruled island typically requires to meet normal demand.
Authorities in Haiti have arrested a prison directorate police officer and a court clerk accused of releasing a gang leader in exchange for bribes, the main prosecutor said on Tuesday.
Police are now searching for an alleged gang leader known as T.I. Sami, who was released over the weekend from a prison in the north coastal city of Fort Liberty. He said the investigation is ongoing and that more people might be involved. The fugitive suspect faces charges including murder and possession of illegal weapons. Haiti has struggled to crack down on gangs that have grown more powerful during the political vacuum following the July 7th assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. A United Nations Security Council report released in February noted that Haiti's judicial system continues to exhibit grave structural weaknesses and that deeply rooted corruption remains a significant obstacle.
Conveniently located in the Grand Anse Shopping Center, for over 40 years, Food Fair has provided quality service at affordable prices. Now, grocery shopping is made easier and more convenient from the Food Fair web store.
Hey, babe. Listen, I need you to go down to Food Fair to get some groceries.
All right, no problem. Right away.
Thanks, babe. What are you doing? You're supposed to be going Food Fair to get a grocery, man.
I am, but didn't you know you can order your groceries online from the Food Fair web store?
Are you serious?
Of course. All you have to do is just to log on to www.foodfair.gd with credit card in hand, and with an order of $100 or more, Food Fair Grand Anse will deliver up to 3 miles away. And you don't even have to worry about your information, you know. Their safety measures are excellent.
So hold on. You just order online and Food Fair will deliver to you?
Yep.
Oh, baby, better hurry up and order, man.
I already did. They should be here any minute now.
Enjoy easy online shopping anytime from your home or office from the Food Fair web store. Food Fair, where you can fill your baskets without emptying your pockets.
I am Eddie Frederick, wishing you a restful weekend. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.